Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
And as Correspondent Week marches on, James, introduce our guest today.
I shall. We're in Merseyside, joined by Sean Norton, our Everton correspondent. How are you, Sean?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, James.
Good man. I'd like to go on a bit of a summer journey with you, if I can. Carlo Ancelotti left. It was a shock that it suddenly came about that Real Madrid went back for him. What was your feelings at the time on him kind of upping and leaving, basically?
Obviously, massively disappointed. And it did happen so quickly in terms of, obviously what the public knew. I'm sure behind the scenes, it probably happened, been going on for a while. But I remember seeing links on Twitter and just I dismissed it. I thought, I can't see them going back in for Ancelotti. And I always knew that, if they did, there was a high chance he would leave. But I just generally couldn't see it happening. And then it was all done and dusted and he'd gone. And it just felt like, a massive kick in the teeth to all the fans, to the club, to all the things that he'd said at the time he'd been at Everton, his views on the Super League and what he thought of the clubs that were involved. And then he ups and leaves for, the main sort of
antagonist
text behind it. Yeah. It just left a massive sense of disappointment for everyone involved. And then the question marks then were raised over the season, because we actually had a good season up until the last quarter. We were right in Champions League contention, and then our form fell off a cliff, and we were dropping all sorts of points to teams you'd expect us to have beaten at home, and it just left a bitter taste in the mouth. Thinking, it felt like he just at some point packed in, just thought, no, I know I'm off to Madrid. He gave up and went through the motions, and it's like that. You think to the moment against Tottenham in the cup, where there was the memes about how cool he was with his coffee when we scored.
Bastard.
And you just look. I look back at it now and think, but he wasn't cool. He just didn't give a shit.
Do you think really? I mean, that's going back to like February, mate.
Well, I definitely can see that he's obviously remained close with Perez, and all it would have took is a phone call. And there's all sorts of reports of things going on in training, etc. And these stories always come out when a manager leaves, not so much at the time of happening. But yeah, it just feels like he'd made the decision to move on, and just went through the motions for the rest of the season. And sorry, Sue, go on.
I was saying, it was surprising and not surprising in equal measure. I mean, a club like Real Madrid comes in and they're going to offer big money, and he's an elite manager. I'm not surprised that he's gone, but at the same time, with the high turnaround in so many jobs, Everton felt like a legacy building opportunity for him, where he could really kind of stamp his authority on the club, get the signings he wanted in, and be there for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Madrid, he's not going to be there in 2 years or 3 years, possibly, maybe. And I get surprised why managers want to jump ship when they've got the opportunity to stay somewhere and build a legacy for a long period. But I guess kind of money talks, and maybe it is that relationship with Perez that he still had. So yeah, I was kind of not surprised and surprised in equal measure when the news came out and he broke.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe a little bit? I mean, I don't know how old Carlo is. Was he mid-60s or? But a little bit maybe that when he was appointed, I was surprised. Not that he isn't a brilliant manager. One of the things that I was really won over last year was the idea that actually he probably is in it for the longer haul, but perhaps he, on reflection, maybe realised that trying to get Everton to the top 4 was going to be a much longer process than perhaps he originally realised. And the opportunity comes, and yeah, it's shitty that he's gone to Real Madrid and what they stand for and etc. But he's probably looked at it and gone, his last hurrah, another chance to win a Champions League or something like that. And unfortunately, he's jumped at it.
Yeah, and you know, it's hard, like I say, it's hard to take, especially like some of the things he said when he went to Real Madrid, and you know, he was sort of saying about, you know, how Madrid are in the Champions League year in, year out, and Everton's sort of ambition is just to qualify for Europe. And then you just think, well, hang on a minute, mate. But that's not what we said to you when you took the job. That's not the ambitions that Moshiri had, and it's not the ambitions that he himself come out and relayed to people in his press conference when he took the job. And of course, he had us in prime contention to qualify for the Champions League, and it was only the results on his watch that stopped us from getting there. So, you know, it was just massively disappointing. But then, you know, obviously quite quickly then we move on, and we get the ever popular choice of Rafa Benitez.
I just want to, before we come on to Rafa, 22 home points last year. And I think it's really important to kind of reiterate that in terms of coming into this season, don't worry about too much about home and away from last year. The freak of no crowds affected a lot of clubs. Everton are one that's going to massively benefit by having the crowd back at Goodison. But yeah, you're absolutely right in terms of if you'd have got the home rights even reasonably, another 10 points at home or something. I don't know how far adrift you finished in the end, but what, 10, 12 points or something from top four? Another 4 home wins or something, and you're there because your away record was brilliant. And just to add as well, I know what you're saying about the Tottenham Cup game, but I think after that, you won at Anfield, you won at Arsenal, you won at West Ham. That wasn't a group of players that, or a manager that didn't care, I don't think. I think they really were still playing at that time, just for whatever reason. Sheffield United at home, there's so many. Fulham, Burnley, Newcastle, unbelievable home results.
No, I just mean, I don't think, because all through the season, the issues where, you know, the home form and particularly, you know, against sides that, you know, come and sit in and defend, and any game where we'd expected to win at Goodison, you know, invariably we never. I mean, we got beat by Sheffield United. It's like one of the worst Premier League teams,
and deservedly so,
it's ever seen. Yeah, exactly.
All those teams who beat you, those 4 teams I mentioned, they all deserve to beat you.
Fulham were absolutely outstanding. We made Fulham look like Man City. It was, and I just mean that because he had the away form, so it wasn't really much that he had to work on. We'd established a way of playing away from home, and it was working. I just don't feel like I just feel like he almost gave up with trying to sort out the home form and work out, because nothing was changing. We weren't trying anything different. You know, it was quite obvious what we were doing was never going to get the wins, but we just picked the same team, playing the same way, same formation, and it's just real. You know, it's a real head scratcher thinking, well, if you're somebody who knows you're committed to the job and you're going to stay there, then you try different things, don't you? You at least show that you recognize what you're doing isn't working, even if it's, you know, going to bear fruit in the following season. But he was just doing exactly the same thing. I mean, his treatment of Josh King, you know, we got Josh King on loan
for, and
exactly. It was like he was determined to never give him more than 7 minutes.
Specifically 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's like right, that's it. I'm going to give him 7 minutes, no more, no less. Every game, doesn't matter what he does. It was utterly bizarre, and I just look at it and think he must have known he was off, and for whatever reason he was just going through the motions, and it's massive. Like I said, it's massively disappointing. But you know, you look at it and you go, well, let's say that he did give it his best. You know, look at where we finished. Some of the managers that we've had over the years that I've berated. Yeah, I've done better than Carlo Ancelotti. So it's not necessarily. I looked at it for, well, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Do you know what I mean? We have had managers come in and do better than what he's done. It's all about how we move forward and who we bring in. But I do believe a big part of him going could well be, and I think, Suj, you know, you touched on it, that he's realised actually there is a lot more work to do here than I thought or what I was led to believe. And then we're we're not in a good position at all with financial fair play. So maybe he knew that the club was going to have to move on a Richarlison, for example, and he's just thought, nah, I've got this other opportunity in Madrid. You know, I don't want to be managing a club where I've got a wheel and deal and I've got to, you know, sell to buy. And maybe that was what made him think.
Is that right?
I'm off.
There's issues with FFP because I know obviously like the stadium moves coming along. We're looking at what 2024 maybe or so. I want to say. There's obviously a lot of finances going to go into that, but that shouldn't come off it might restrict you in terms of how much you can spend, but I think what you build on stadiums, etc., doesn't come out like your FFP stuff. Like if you build a training ground or you build a stadium, that's not factored into it. So are you really struggling? Are you in a position you've got to sell a big name like a Richarlison?
We have. I mean, it's a bit of a...
Thanks, ringing, Suj.
Yeah, this is the problem in this. I actually have no idea how to turn this phone off.
Pick it up.
The only way I can do it is answer the call and hang up on the person.
Brilliant. Correct.
So what we did earlier was I thought I'd unplug it from the wall.
Yeah.
Turns off the internet, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you can't do that one as well.
Anyway, Sean, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, so with regard to FFP, it's all I sort of... There's a guy on Twitter amongst the Everton community called the Esk, and he's a very polarizing character. He's a gentleman that he does know his stuff. He really does know his stuff, and he's been sort of warning for years about Everton's financial position. You know, he understands it far better than any of us would, because it's his livelihood. He's involved in business, and his podcast that he does is really good listening to. So all I know from him is that we have broke FFP rules. We are past. Our losses have exceeded what they're allowed to be. So what comes from that, we'll have to wait and see. But if there's a punishment to be given out, Everton will 100% get it. It's just how it always works.
Wow.
But Carlo,
Sean dropping bombs.
Yeah, just watch this space, but it will happen. And Carlo Ancelotti himself, he touched on it before he fucked off to Madrid. He said, "Well, how are they gonna come? Why are they gonna come punishing Everton when there's these guys who've tried to form a Super League and destroy the Premier League completely? So, I'm sure the Premier League will be worried about them." And there was a sort of noises being made that Everton were just going to disregard FFP, take the fine or the European ban that comes along with it, and just do, what the club needed to do to move forward. But that definitely doesn't appear to be the case, because they've apparently got, a few deals lined up for players, but they can't hit the button on them because we need to sell.
The signings recently, Demarai, Gray, Andros, Townsend, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
You saying
exactly.
that?
Yeah.
We'll come back onto them.
Yeah.
I jump money for a little bit. Let's talk Rafa, because I know how you feel might not be how all the Evertonians are feeling, because you pretty much from the first time I spoke to you have been very pro the idea of Rafa Benitez becoming Everton manager. Yeah. Why is that? And why are you on board with the appointment?
Well, so I've always wanted Rafa Benitez, because I've always believed that we were appointing managers who didn't have the credentials to manage my football club, and it always would rankle with me. And obviously, when Carlo Ancelotti was appointed, it was obviously a very easy appointment to get behind, and that's the caliber of manager that I expect Everton to be going for. And Rafa, I'm not really bothered the team that he managed over the park, because he won them the Champions League. He done a very, very good job there. And if he's good enough for them, then why isn't he good enough for us? And I get tribalism and all the rest of it, but he's managed a lot of different teams and he's done well with all of them. He's tactically astute and he's tactically aware. He's a pragmatist, and I definitely think that the way for Everton to go forward is with a pragmatic approach. And it's no surprise that that's what Carlo Ancelotti had. That's what David Moyes had. You've got to be solid. You're not going to attract Europe's best players to Everton So I just think it's foolish to think that you're going to be able to attract a manager that's going to play free-flowing, fast-attacking football and actually get results to go alongside it. I know Graham Potter got spoken about with regards to a lot of the jobs that have been going. Your job at Tottenham, the job, Wolves were looking for a manager, Crystal Palace were looking for a manager. Everyone's been talking about Graham Potter, and I've watched Brighton play, and Brighton play, fantastic football. But we appointed a guy going back many years who managed the team and were in contention to win the Premier League, and they played great football, and we appointed him, and we were atrocious. His name was Mike Walker. And
that nearly ended with the ultimate disaster, mate, in 93, 94.
Exactly. And I look at Graham Potter and some of the comments he makes about, I've seen him make about Brighton fans, and when he put a bit of pressure on him, and he feels uncomfortable, and I thought, well, you're definitely not going to get a top job anytime soon if that's your sort of mindset and your mentality, because if you go to a big club, then there's pressure, and Everton might not be as big as they used to be, but there's certainly pressure from the fan base. So Rafa Benitez is somebody that I just saw what he'd done at Chelsea, where again they didn't want him. They were actively protesting at the matches, against him, and all sorts of banners and chants. And he's that thick-skinned because he's experienced, and he's focused on his job. He knows what he's got to do. He goes into football clubs and he does it, and he doesn't care about the noise around him. And we absolutely need somebody like that, pragmatic, tactically astute, not going to let the moans and groans of the fans get to him. And that's why I can get behind, his appointment. He's got a really tough job, and I think this is why he's got it, because there are now going to be sort of financial restrictions placed upon him that other managers haven't had to work under. But now, because we've wasted so much money, the chickens have come home to roost, and he's going to have to try to manage through that process. And I think he's a safe pair of hands from as far as the club's concerned, to make sure that the team, at least makes it to Bramley Moore in a few years, and still a decent Premier League side. So it makes a lot of sense to me. The only negative was the reaction of the fan base, and I'm as much as I want him, I'm very surprised that they appointed him, because of how many people within the club, ex-legends and stuff, who are so anti-Liverpool and anti-Rafa Benitez. So I didn't actually think it would ever happen. But I do believe they've made a smart move, and I don't think there's anybody better than him that we could have appointed.
We've spoken in the past of you about trying to progress as a football club and not worrying so much about what the opposition have done. And you and I have spoken about that a lot, because I've been through similar things with Arsenal, right? Being like 20 years behind them when they were invincible in 2004, and you'd think there was no chance for us ever getting anywhere near them and stuff. That said, I've also been through the George Graham thing, and I know how poisonous that was at Tottenham. And admittedly, we were a bad team at that time. But actually, if you're comparing what you're saying about the financial restrictions and clubs around you like West Ham, Leicester, Leeds, Tottenham, Arsenal, and you're trying to push into the top six and you're saying you're restricted, that makes it really difficult. And it also makes your situation quite comparable to what Tottenham was 22, 23 years ago or so. And I just know no matter what he did at Tottenham, he won a trophy with Tottenham. The fans were never, ever going to take to him. Every bad result was put on Graham. And a lot of the time, rightly so, by the way, in my opinion. But I'm a little bit concerned that Benitez, for me, feels a little bit doomed to fail, because no matter what he does, unless he probably does give Everton its first trophy in 25 years or gets it back into Europe, which sounds difficult based on what you're saying, some fans are just not going to be turning. No matter what he does, they're not going to be turning.
James, a question though. Do you think Benitez is a better manager than George Graham? Because I think Benitez is a better manager than George Graham was. Different eras, I get it.
It is. It's very difficult to compare.
I trust Benitez to turn Everton fans around.
My answer would have to be yes, but then look at the way Sean's talking about pragmatic football, and actually there's comparisons in that as well, right? With how Graham won the title with Arsenal in 89 and 91, and then particularly the cup wins they had in the early to mid 90s. Like they were boring Arsenal for a reason, right? In terms of comparing the managers, very, very difficult. If you drop George Graham in a Premier League team now, he's going to get relegated, but football's completely changed.
Yeah.
So how would Rafa have got on with how astute and tactically detailed he is back in the 90s? People probably wouldn't have been listening to him because they'd be like, shut up, mate, I'm going down a pub. Like football's completely changed. But I think there are some comparisons we can draw between the lines of it. I don't really mean to compare George Graham to Rafa Benitez, but I think you understand the point I'm making, Sean.
I don't know. I think it's a more than fair comparison. I do I absolutely see where you're coming from, and I do agree. Again, that's why I was surprised that the club sort of actually went with it. I do believe he's the best man for the job. If you take away the tribalism and the point of view of some of the fans from it, but absolutely, it does seem like he's set up to fail. I mean, I've already seen a lot of fans talking about the style of play, and that's why I sort of touched on it, because I just don't get what some fans expect. I don't see anybody on the planet walking in, managing Everton, and getting them to play attractive football and get results. I think if we'd have given the job to Graham Potter, he'd have been stuck with a squad that isn't set up to play attractive football, can't necessarily buy the players to play attractive football, and he's then got to somehow transition the team. It'd just be a nightmare, and I could see us then struggling, to stay up, like we did with Mike Walker. So Benitez makes loads of sense, but the fans are already talking about, oh well, we've got to play better football this season than last season. Well, why is he likely to make that happen? How's he gonna? He hasn't got a magic wand. It's unfair to expect any manager to come in and without wholesale changes pull that off. But we all want to watch our team play really attractive, fast-flowing football, but it's not. It's not reality. So he's already up against it. And then James Rodriguez said something on his Twitch stream the other night, and everybody jumped on Benitez's back straight away. There's not one direct quote from Rafa Benitez saying, "I don't want James Rodriguez to play for Everton," but everyone's attacking him, and Rafa Benitez goes and Rodriguez stays. Well, Rodriguez is allegedly on £200,000 a week.
Jesus.
And he plays probably 50% of the matches. So if the club's up against it financially, I think it makes a lot of sense to free up that money that may then mean we can bring in one or two players that we desperately need.
It's effective £400,000 a week, so he turns up half the time.
Exactly. I don't know, something like 10
and
million,
that's not
10
necessarily
million a year.
That's not necessarily to blame the player, by the way. It's just his historical with injuries and stuff.
Yeah, and we most of us said this when we signed him. It's like he's an exceptional footballer. I've not seen too many players over recent years like him, as good as him at Everton. But it doesn't make sense to try to build a squad or a team around him. I mean, if you've got a strong squad and he's part of it, then great. But we haven't. And Carlo has obviously used him in the past, and it was no question at all that that's why we signed him, because Ancelotti wanted him. And you look at the players that we signed last summer, and I did question. I remember saying to you, I didn't think we'd sign Allen and Doucouré. I thought we'd get one or the other, because I didn't see them both playing in the same team as each other. And that invariably give us issues with some of the results that we were getting last season. Because there's no true replacement for Gana Gay yet. And we desperately needed that. We didn't get it last year. So with Gabaman coming back, hopefully
you might actually get to see him play. No one's seen him kick the ball for 2 years.
No. So I mean, he's I've watched a couple of the preseason friendlies. You can't judge anyone in the preseason friendly, but it was just good to see him in the kit and on the pitch and playing.
2 years after signing, it's horrendous.
It's mad. So there is a lot of work for Rafa to do, and he is up against it with the fans. So it's hard. It is, I think it smacks of a 6 to 9 month appointment, because you can just imagine a few bad results at Goodison. And whereas no one really batted an eyelid at Carlo Ancelotti because he was Carlo Ancelotti, it will just 100% be the other way.
That's my concern.
Because it's Rafa Benitez. Even it's going to be like Sam Allardyce all over again, like times 10.
Well, talking about the squad, I do think looking at the squad and the makeup of some of the players, it's reasonably well suited towards a Rafa Benitez if he's defensive and strong and wants to set up with a strong defensive structure. The players that we just mentioned there in midfield, but not just that, even defensively, the centre backs. There was times that you were playing with kind of 3 or 4 centre backs sometimes last year. It's set up to be pragmatic and defensively sound. So perhaps that's one thing in his advantage. The squad lends itself towards his style of play, especially in the early setup.
What do you expect him tactically, Sean, in terms of system, to add to that?
I think we'll probably play 4-2-3-1 again. I think we'll go back to playing that type of system in the main, and then it'll just it'll depend on who we're playing and where we're playing as to what the 3 behind the 1 do. I'm sure there'll be times where they're very wide in certain games, and then there'll be other games where they're tucked in and they're very narrow. I think the fact he signed Andros Townsend speaks volumes, because one of his best attributes is undoubtedly his work rate, and I've seen he's covering more ground and putting more sort of miles in now than he ever has in his career. So, Richarlison as well, we know, should he stay, is a very, very hard working, predominantly used as a wide player. And I think that the number 10 position will be very interesting because we've got certainly a few options at number 10, which again, I think will be part of the reason why they're looking to move James Rodriguez on.
Who would you expect, if James went, who would you expect to pick up the 10 position, just briefly?
Well, they've spoke about, he spoke about Demarai Gray playing at number 10.
Oh, interesting.
So we could well see that, but obviously I think that's where Doucouré will come into his own playing there, because that's what he done for Watford. That's where he was really good for Watford.
He was forward, there, second half under Nigel Pearson in that position for Watford.
So yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if Benitez has got that more in mind, and then you might actually see the Doucouré that that Watford had, because we signed him, and like I said before, I was a bit surprised. I didn't really see how he was going to fit into Carlo's way of playing, and Carlo just sort of used him as a more defensive minded midfielder, which I don't think suited Doucouré's strengths.
Any chance you think of Rafa not liking Jordan Pickford?
I can't see why. But go on. You've got something.
No, it was something that was a throwaway comment I made on one of the shows we did a week or two ago, that I just didn't see him as a Rafa Benitez goalkeeper in terms of defending deep, being pragmatic, letting crosses come in and deal with those kind of things. I didn't visualize him as a Jordan Pickford goalkeeper. I'm not suggesting Asmir Begovic has been brought in, who Neil Grover told us last week was on astronomical wages with Bournemouth, which makes sense why he left there. But I just wondered if there was a little bit concern about Pickford in terms of if Benitez might look to phase him out potentially.
I'd be surprised. I see where you're coming from, but I mean, Jordan has been mentioned on
a brilliant summer.
Every podcast that I've ever done with yourselves.
Let's move on then.
Jordan gets a mention. But I know on the last one I've done with Adam Hopcroft, when we were talking about him with the Euros coming up in mind, and if you remember, I did sort of mention how he'd sort of gone under the radar a bit, his improvement the couple of months before, and I was very confident he was going to do well for England at the Euros, which pleased Adam immeasurably.
He did do great for England. I think you're right. I think throughout 2021 he's done well. I know you'd said previously he was working with a psychologist and stuff as well to probably calm his, because he has games where he's too hyped sometimes. Joe Hart had this problem as well. He's too hyped. So maybe he's calming down a little bit. Yeah, it's just a concern over his height, basically. in terms of his dominance of his area, because that's the problematic. One of the reasons I've always said looks great for England, sometimes susceptible for Everton, is don't have to deal with crosses in national football the way you have to in our league. So I think it's been very suitable to him. Who would you say, if it's back four then, Sean, first choice centre-backs in your opinion?
Well, it's going to be interesting because normally I would say Godfrey and Mina.
Okay.
But there is a lot of talk about Mina getting moved on. And again, I can't really question the approach, but it looks like Benitez, because apparently his interview was outstanding, and he basically had a plan for the squad when he walked into his interview of what he wanted to do, where he believed the club could move forward, and it looks like he's targeting players who are missing a lot of minutes. And Yerry is, for me, our best centre half, but he just always picks up niggles. I don't know whether it's because he's just huge. He's a monster, and he's his game is very physical, and he always seems to just pick up niggles that stop him putting 6-7 games, on the run together. So there's talk of him going. So, if he goes, then it will be Godfrey and Keane. Unless, of course, we sell Mina, we bring someone else in, which, I'd imagine that we would, because the only other option is Mason Holgate. And, he's somebody that struggled big parts of last season when he did come in, especially when he plays with Ben Godfrey.
I guess there's a chance as well with Holgate. If you don't... So this is why some of the stuff you're telling me about spending money is a little bit surprising, because we'd heard a couple of weeks ago that Denzel Dumfries was going to be coming in, who obviously flew for Holland at the Euros. You're thinking Dean one side, Dumfries the other. Oh, that doesn't actually sound pragmatic. That sounds quite exciting, particularly from a fancy perspective. But I guess if you don't sign a right back, I guess it's Holgate and Coleman in competition for that position. Would that be fair at right back?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to say we'll definitely sign a right back, but I've been saying this on these pods for about 4 years, it feels like. And I haven't even been doing them for 4 years, but it feels like I have. I'm convinced we'll sign a right back this summer. I think that's why they're trying to move players out. It's got to be the number one position. Now we've, wheeled and dealed a little bit and got Townsend and Demarai Gray in. I absolutely think the next signing will be a right back.
Every time a correspondent mentions right back, James tries to sell both of his. So, James, you want to have a go at flogging yours to Everton as well?
That doesn't sound like they got the money, but to be honest, just take the wages. I'm quite okay with that, with a pair of them. I take it for you then, from a fancy perspective, Mason Holgate is the cheapest at 4.5. I take it for you that's a no-go then.
Yeah, I wouldn't go near Holgate.
And on the other side, Luca Dean, 5.5. Tell me you're starting with him, Sean.
I can't say I've spent loads of time on my team. I'm just looking at it. Yeah, he's in my team at the minute.
I'd have been amazed if he wasn't, mate.
Yeah, I have got it. Is he? What is he? Did you say 5.5?
5.5.
I just think you've got to have him for 5.5 million. Rafa Benitez just screams clean sheets, doesn't he? And
set pieces.
I always say fantastic. To you, yeah, Dean is always liable to deliver something from an attacking point of view. And I think last season was an outlier season because he didn't score, and he's more than
for 2
capable.
years in the Premier League.
Is it 2?
Yeah.
Well,
scored 4 in his first season, none since.
Well, he's due a bucket load of goals then from free kicks and stuff. So absolutely have him.
989 attacking returns. So we know the consistency we can expect from him. It's whether the clean sheets come with that takes him from a 120 to 130 point player to 150 to 160 point player. And if he's at the top end, then that's amazing. Of course, there's so much interest in your assets, and particularly Luca Dean. I mean, he's in over 20% of teams at the time of recording. The fixture run you have, mate, is sustained and brilliant. Arguably up till you play Leicester in game week 11, you could make a case that the only top half teams you play in that period, Leeds away game week 2, Villa away maybe game week 5. United away game week 7, yes. West Ham at home game week 8. Everyone else you'd probably expect to finish bottom half. And even those I'm saying top half, some of them are questionable. That is a brilliant set of fixtures, mate. All the way up to Tottenham in game week 11. We can skip that. All the way up to the time you go to the Etihad in game week 12. Phenomenal sustained run of fixtures.
Yeah, other than of course the fact that
you're shit.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Against those teams. So our fixture difficulty, that is kind of, it should be flipped. Because they're the games that we struggle in. So I know people are looking at it and thinking this is a great run of fixtures, but I look at it and think, oh God, this is gonna be hard. This is gonna be tough. So yeah, it depends. It depends how you want to look at it. And of course, with Rafa being there, if we don't, I know it sounds mad, but if we don't beat Southampton on the first day of the season,
you're putting pressure on.
He will be up against it. I mean, he's up against it anyway. But if we don't beat Southampton, the knives will be out for him, and it just puts the pressure on all the other games that follow then.
Yeah, I massively agree with that, because actually the next two, which when you look at a sustained period of fixtures, don't look bad, but suddenly individually you look at Leeds away and go, don't fancy that. Brighton away, don't fancy that.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, Villa away, don't fancy that. 2 weeks later, Man United away, don't fancy that. And suddenly, individually, although as a group collective, the fixtures look great, individually start going, might struggle there a bit, actually. Might not be as good as it looks. So I agree. I think there is a lot of pressure on that Southampton home game where, it's not going to take much for that crowd to turn. And that's the concern, that Goodison might not be what Goodison should be and help you and make sure taking 22 points at home doesn't happen again. That's I'm sure whatever happens, you'll get more than that.
You'd like to think so. When it's very difficult to imagine that they'd be that bad again with the crowd being back. But if the crowd are all anti Rafa Benitez because we haven't got off to a good start, then we could have a poor home season. I think the fact that the crowd's been away for so long, I think that atmosphere, first day of the season, the Rafa Benitez stuff will go out the window. For that game, and hopefully, they can get off to a good start and get the win, and that'll, help everybody out massively. I just fear that if we don't win that first game, it's going to set the tone for a really difficult season. With, like you say, those games that follow certainly not straightforward.
What you want is you go to the game. It's the first time the fans all go back. They forget whatever their beliefs are, to lose themselves in the moment of being at Goodison. And you either want something where like you win 3-0 and you're brilliant, or you nick a last minute winner or something. So everybody just leaves in a great mood and you move on.
Definitely. And I think the thing about the players that we've signed so far, whilst they're not fancy signings, they are signings that we need for the team. Andros Townsend might be 30 years of age and just let go by Crystal Palace, but the contributions made by the likes of Bernard was so fleeting that I do think Townsend will easily be able to come in and contribute more for the team than Bernard was.
And obviously Rafa knows Andros very well from the time together at Newcastle.
Where
there wasn't a lot expected there of him. We'd fallen out with Pochettino at Tottenham, and he was probably Newcastle's shining light in trying to keep them up that season. Rafa knows the player. 5.5, that's ridiculous, isn't it? We're not considering him or Demarai grade to start with, are we?
No, I don't think so, because he hasn't got the sort of goal scoring pedigree, has he, Andros Townsend? So I think he'll probably chip in with a couple of goals, 2 or 3 goals maybe throughout the season.
But
he'll invariably get assists. I mean, that's what I mean. That's why it makes perfect sense. You can see his crossing stats are really good. His work rate, they're what we need on that right hand side, and he's going to be servicing one of the best centre forwards in the league. Certainly from an aerial point of view.
I've seen you say you think you can get 20 this year, DCL.
Yeah, it was a little bit tongue in cheek, to be honest.
Because that's the trajectory, right? It was 13, 16. The next step is 20 goals.
Well, Yeah. It was just, the fact that we've gone out and we thought, like, there's all this talk about signing the lad that Villa have just about to get, Leon Bailey. And, normally we splash the cash in the summer, and I was just sitting there thinking, we're not going to be spending loads of money. And then we just got Demarai, Gray and Townsend for, the lump sum of, I don't know, a couple of packs of opal fruits or something. And I thought, yeah. Dom's going to be licking his lips, isn't he now, thinking, from James Rodriguez to Andros Townsend.
Any thoughts of starting with Dom at 8 million?
I do think, yeah. I mean, I haven't gone from him just because of the whole Everton thing that we talk about, trying to not have too many assets from your own team, because it just ruins match day for you if you have a bad result. So I've got Bamford instead of Calvert-Lewin. But I do think he could easily get 20 goals if Townsend comes in, does what he's capable of doing, and does give, because we didn't really have much service from the right hand side last season. Pretty much everything was coming down the left. So you think, well, Townsend on the right, Charlison stays. You've got Luca Dean playing more as an orthodox left back, so he can sort of sneak forward, and some of the crosses he's put in already in pre-season. And Moise Keane, he put one on a plate for Moise Keane.
Doesn't even have a price yet at the time of recording. We're recording on Monday the 2nd. He doesn't even have a price. Yeah. So, I mean, he's your only forward playing at them. I guess it's half a chance that he starts game week 1. It's got to be. Well,
he's another one that sort of trying to. We need to get a big player out for a decent fee. So the hope was the PSG. We could make PSG sign him. I think people sort of missed the fact
too busy signing everyone else.
Right? Yeah. Well, the reason why PSG got him was because they got him on loan. You know what I mean? It's like they just took advantage of the fact we were willing to loan him out. I don't think they've got any interest in spending big money on him. Because he went there and he done all right, everyone just assumed, oh, well, they'll come in and buy him. Well, they won't, will they? They'll just go and loan another striker from somebody. They've signed a load of players, but they're not splashing out loads of cash in transfer fees. They picked up a fair few free transfers and stuff. So, a lot of clubs are wheeling and dealing, aren't they? There's not too many who are splashing the cash. So I think we'll struggle to offload Moise Keane. So he invariably will end up being part of the squad. But I wouldn't touch him. Because he's
but someone from official FPL needs to give him a price.
Right? He should have a price, shouldn't he?
Yeah,
sure.
You've got 2 goalkeepers at 4.0. It's lazy. I mean, poor Gabamin, who was bought for 20 odd million or something when you bought him. He's so poor forgotten. He hasn't even got a price, the poor bastard, and he might be starting game week 1.
Yeah. I definitely think he'll be getting game time. Has he not got a price?
He's not got a price yet, mate.
Not yet. No.
Wow.
I mean, that area of the pitch is quite decent for you with Gomez, Gabamin, Allen. So whoever the 2 are in front of your back 4, if it's 2 out of those 3, for example. And so are we saying the front 4, then you've got Townsend on the right, Richarlison on the left, DCL up top, and then one of Decore or James in the middle behind.
Yeah. Or Demarai Gray. Yeah. I think. There is another option, and potentially that there's not even worth talking about. But we are stocked at number 10, and it will be very interesting to see, who Rafa plays.
They're all priced 5.5 or 6.5, kind of that bracket. So one of them might emerge.
I think the standout one could be Decore at 5.5.
Yeah.
If he plays that position like he played for Watford, that makes him a different animal.
Yeah. I just get the feeling that that'll be the position more than any that Benitez plays around with, depending on the fixture and the opponent. Because you think it does make a lot of sense to play Decore in certain games, and then maybe Demarai Gray will be used later on. Maybe he'll come on and use his pace because he's already shaping up, to be very, he's very counter-attacking, Rafa, in the way he plays. And a lot of what I've seen in the pre-season games, you can see that's what they're trying to do: switch the play quickly from left to right and right to left, and get runners in behind. We haven't done enough of that in the last season or 2. So it could be interesting. But I wouldn't think from an FPL point of view. There's DCL and Luca Dean, and I wouldn't go near anybody else. Yeah.
Agreed.
Keep an eye on, like James is saying, stick Doucouré on the watch list and see what happens. Even Demarai Gray, but DCL and Dean are the two standouts. And
Richarlison, we're assuming. Obviously. At time of recording, he's got to the Olympic semi-final. He's got no chance of playing game week 1, which is, if anyone was wondering why we haven't spoken about him, to be honest, the official site might as well put a red flag on him. He's not going to play in game week 1. I'd be staggered if he did. Although I know Benitez is desperate for him to come back as soon as possible, but I don't think you could start with him. I think Calvert-Lewin is probably unlikely for me. I'd say the nearer it gets, the more appealing Luca Dean is, because I'm so attracted by that set of fixtures that Everton have, and I think he's a standout for me.
Yeah.
So
I've got Luke Shaw.
I may well pay for him.
I've got Luke Shaw sitting there at 5.5, and it's a flip of a coin at the moment. If Shaw's not going to start game week 1, I'll end up getting Luca Dean in, and I'm actually then happy to keep Luca Dean for 6, 7, 8, 9 game weeks. So I may just make that move and say, even if Shaw's fit and is going to start game week 1, I might end up with Luca Dean anyway.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to consider, I'm not saying that people haven't, but Luca Dean quite possibly could end up taking penalties and will certainly take a lot more free kicks, because when you think of who was in the team last season that took a lot of set pieces that isn't around, then Luca Dean will pick that up. And especially if we do move Rodriguez on, which I'm absolutely convinced that Rodriguez will be gone when the window shuts. So Luca Dean's set piece potential skyrockets for me.
More. Yeah.
You absolutely could have saved everyone, Sean, the 45 minutes they've been listening to this and said that in minute 1, but we appreciate it, mate.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Listen, that what you said at the end now is ownership's about to go up.
The people listen to these.
Yeah, I was going to say, James, there's
the
only
millions,
about 20 people.
Millions of Planet FPL listeners.
You never told me that. I thought this was just us.
You'd have had a shave, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you, Sean. Really enjoyed that, mate.
Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell the listeners, the odd few that haven't maybe come across you on previous COTCs, where they can find you on socials and all the rest of it?
Well, I can't. What's my name? Spirit Blues. Spirit _Blues on Twitter.
_Blues. Indeed, James already. He knows all the correspondents' Twitter handles better than they all know them themselves.
I don't know why anybody ever has the underscore, because they all forget it when they have to say it out loud. Just finally, Sean, one last question. In one word, where do you think you finish?
10th.
That's the exact number I had in my mind. Interesting. Good luck, mate.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Yes. James, do you want to tell the listeners where we're heading to from Everton next?
Do I have to? Arsenal 3-5. I mean, he's lovely. He's just less than a team.
Fantastic. So make sure wherever you are listening to the podcast, you are subscribed. You'll get notified as soon as all of the rest of the Correspondent Week podcasts go live, and we've got another 12 or 13 left for you. Stay safe. Chat for now.
Thanks, Sean. Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.